Netflix has an ever-changing library of content, and within this massive new TV shows entering and leaving the platform, it could be easy to overlook some excellent historical TV shows on the streaming service. So the purpose of this list is to give you my recommendations of 50 amazing historical TV shows that you can watch on Netflix right now. But before we begin, don't forget, if you love anything to do with historical movies and historical TV shows, then subscribe to my channel, History Spark. At number 50, it is The Abandons, a Netflix original series which depicts a fierce family feud set in 1850s Oregon between a fierce and ruthless matriarch and a wealthy mining tycoon as they barely fight over a land dispute. And this series does a great job of building the tension between the two families, and The Abandons can get a bit brutal and very over the top violent at times. But overall, it's got a decent enough story that moves along at a good pace considering the limited episode count. But this series does have some pretty weak dialogue, and the acting by Lena Headey wasn't all that great, and the show isn't that realistic either. But if you want a brutal look at the American frontier and don't mind a bit of blood and gore, then The Abandons is the show for you. At number 49, it is the Netflix original series All the Light We Cannot See, which is a 4-episode limited series which follows a blind French girl named Marie Laure who aids the resistance through coded radio broadcasts, and a reluctant German soldier named Werner who becomes entangled in her story during the Nazi occupation of France in World War II. This series benefits from stunning cinematography, great production design, and some brilliant acting by first-time actress Aria Mia Loberti, who is actually blind in real life, bringing some vivid authenticity to the role. However, the flashback method of storytelling is a bit cluttered and jarring at times, and the dialogue isn't the greatest either. But if you're looking for a visually engaging series with strong acting, then All the Light We Cannot See is the show for you. At number 48, it is The Lost Pirate Kingdom, a docudrama which depicts the rise and fall of the Pirate Republic of Nassau, as well as giving a brief look into the lives of pirates like Benjamin Hornigold and Blackbeard. This is the perfect documentary series for anyone that isn't overly familiar with 18th century pirate history, as The Lost Pirate Kingdom provides a very simplistic and easy to follow narrative of the history of Nassau. The pacing of the series was far too quick for my liking, but it is still a great entry-level show for anyone wanting to find out more about pirate history. At number 47 is The Decameron, a dark comedy historical series which follows a group of Italian nobles and their servants who flee plague-ravaged Florence in 1348 to wait out the Black Death at a countryside villa, only to find that their new lives quickly devolve into scheming, class warfare, and deadly chaos. The best thing about The Decameron is that the show does not take itself too seriously, and it finds many unique ways to bring some comedic moments to the chaos unfolding all around them. So if you're looking for a period drama that would be a good, funny, one-time watch, then you should check out The Decameron. At number 46, it is Testament, the story of Moses, which is a docu-series depicting the life of Moses from his childhood to his last days, leading the Israelites to the Promised Land. This is a 3-part mini-series which tries to depict the entirety of Moses' life, but this is a very difficult feat to achieve within 3 episodes, resulting in the pacing of the show being very poor. But there's also some great acting, fantastic cinematography, and set pieces which will keep the viewer engaged in the series throughout. At number 45, it is La Révolution, a historical TV show set during the French Revolution in 1789. But instead of presenting a straightforward historical drama, it reimagines the period as a gothic horror fantasy where aristocratic blood literally transforms people into murderous monsters. This series is a mixture of historical fiction and a supernatural thriller, with some impressive cinematography and costume design and set pieces ready to engross audiences. At number 44, it is Alexander the Making of a God, a docudrama series that chronicles the rise of Alexander the Great from a young warrior prince in Macedonia to a self-proclaimed deity and eventual conqueror of the Persian Empire. This miniseries features some pretty decent acting overall, with Maido Hamad as Darius being the standout performance for me. But the plot in Alexander the Making of a God is not very engaging, and the pacing is really bad as well. But if you're looking for an entertaining and easy to follow documentary about Alexander the Great, then Alexander the Making of a God is a series you should add to your watch list as soon as possible. At number 43 is The Cook of Castamar, a Netflix original miniseries which tells the story about an unlikely romance between a lowly cook and the Duke of Castamar, each of whom is dealing with their own personal issues and losses. It still has some decent acting, an interesting enough storyline overall, and some great set pieces and costume design. So if you're looking for something new and different that you may have missed on Netflix, then The Cook of Castamar is definitely a show you should check out. At number 42 on this list is Roman Empire, a historical TV show based around various emperors and key figures such as Commodus, Julius Caesar and Caligula, with all of them leaving an everlasting mark on Roman history. This show is a mixture of a historical drama and a documentary, with the story playing out on the screen and then being further delved into and explained by narrators and professors. So if you're looking for a show that is easy to get engrossed into and presents some of the complex history of the Roman Empire in a simplified manner, then Roman Empire is the perfect docu-series for you. At number 41, it is My Dearest, a South Korean historical drama set in the backdrop of the Qing invasion which occurred in the 17th century, and this series does a fantastic job of depicting the impact that brutal conquest has on the common folk and the villages that get raided. It also has a budding romance between a spoiled noblewoman and a mysterious and skilled warrior, which is an interesting subplot initially but eventually does get a bit tedious. My Dearest has some great acting, a fascinating storyline, and this series does a good job of following the historical timeline of events very well. But overall, My Dearest is definitely one of the best new historical TV shows that you can watch on Netflix right now. At number 40, it is Churchill at War, a docu-series that chronicles Winston Churchill's leadership during World War II by brilliantly using colorized archival footage and expert interviews to explore how his early life and what is referred to as his wilderness years preparing him to rally Britain against Nazi Germany. Churchill at War is one of the better World War II documentaries I have seen because of the colorized footage bringing something unique and fascinating to the genre. And it does a decent job of highlighting just how challenging World War II was for Churchill and England overall as well. Acting in this miniseries though is pretty weak even by documentary standards. If you want an interesting look at the life of Winston Churchill, then Churchill at War is the series for you. At number 38, it is 1670, a witty Polish historical mockumentary which depicts the life of deluded nobleman Jan Paweł Adamowski as he navigates family squabbles and political ambitions in 17th century Poland and Lithuania. 1670 is a pretty funny historical series and it relies on really cringe moments as its primary form of humor. But if you want a unique and interesting look at historical satire that blends Polish history with modern mockumentary humor, then 1670 is a great recommendation for you. At number 37, it is Captivating the King, a South Korean historical drama which tells the fictitious story of King Yi of the Joseon dynasty and the cruel court politics he must contend with, making it impossible for him to find someone at his court that he can trust. And this series has all the standards of a top tier South Korean historical TV show with some great set pieces, brilliant acting, and a plot that magnificently builds the tension and suspense within each episode. But my primary critique with Captivating the King though is with its final episode where it really dropped the ball and it did not resolve many of the main storylines adequately and it rushed in far too much information in such a small time period. But if you're looking for a series that has 15 amazing episodes and a lackluster finale, then Captivating the King is my recommendation for you. At number 36, it is Medal of Honor, an 8-part docudrama which tells the heroic and amazing stories of 8 individuals who received the Medal of Honor award, the US military's highest military decoration. And each episode tells the story of one individual from different wars across American history, including World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam War, and Afghanistan. The storytelling, actual real footage usage, and reenactments are just amazing, and Medal of Honor is a great homage to all the men and women of the armed forces. So if you haven't seen this brilliant war docu-series yet, I highly recommend you check it out. At number 35, it is Age of Samurai Battle for Japan, a docu-series which covers one of Japan's most brutal and deadliest eras, covering the tail end of the Sengoku period from 1551 to 1616. This documentary covers the story of 3 powerful daimyos from Japan's history, Oda Nobunaga, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and Tokugawa Ieyasu, each of whom played a significant role in unifying Japan and bringing an end to feudal rule in the country. but it is definitely not a history book, and there are a great number of historical inaccuracies within this documentary, and some of the narrators are not very interesting either. But if you're looking for a show that depicts the brutal life of the samurai in a magnificent way, then Age of Samurai Battle for Japan is my recommendation for you. At number 34, it is The Leopard, which follows a character named Don Fabrizio, the Prince of Salina, as he navigates the political upheaval of Sicily's unification with Italy in 1860, in which his aristocratic world crumbles around him and his family's fortune and status hang at great risk. The Leopard has an interesting plot, great set pieces, especially the Sicilian palaces and landscapes, and some pretty decent acting by the entire cast as well. The biggest flaw with this miniseries though is that the pacing for The Leopard is pretty poor, and it is a bit of a slower show than I was expecting. But if you're looking for a gorgeously crafted period drama, then The Leopard is my recommendation for you. At number 33, it is Great Events of World War II in Color, a 10-episode documentary that chronicles key battles and turning points of World War II by using advanced colorized techniques to restore archival footage and combining it with engaging expert commentary. But it also can't be overlooked that several major events and battles of World War II were just completely glossed over, and there was hardly any focus given to the battles outside of Europe. But if you're looking for a unique and interesting look at World War II through beautifully restored footage, then Greatest Events of World War II in Color is the documentary series for you. At number 32, it is Hiramandi, The Diamond Bazaar, a lavish historical drama directed by Bollywood legend Sanjay Leela Bansali, which chronicles the lives of powerful courtesans in pre-independence Lahore as they navigate love, betrayal, and a rising Indian independence movement against British rule. Hiramandi is definitely one of the most visually stunning shows I have ever seen, and it does a great job of highlighting the opulent but tragic world of high-end courtesans and the politics at play within these houses of pleasure. However, if you want a unique and interesting look at a bygone era of Indian culture, then you need to add Hiramandi to your watch list as soon as possible. At number 30, it is Nero the Assassin, which is a French historical fantasy TV series set in 16th century southern France, in which a lone assassin named Nero must protect his estranged daughter Perla from religious fanatics, as many believe she is the devil's descendant and they are trying to hunt her down. The acting in Nero the Assassin is surprisingly good, and the plot here is very interesting, with the hand-to-hand fight sequences being really spectacular. However though, the pacing is a bit rocky as a lot of backstory and mythology has to be told, which does distract from the primary plot at times. But if you want a unique historical fantasy TV series about a resourceful anti-hero who will do anything to survive, then Nero the Assassin is the series for you. At number 29, it is Death by Lightning, a historical miniseries that depicts the extraordinary true story of the 20th US President James Garfield and his obsessed admirer Charles Goodell, who ultimately assassinates him. But of course, it is hard to get two large storylines developed, fleshed out and concluded effectively in just 4 episodes, so Death by Lightning is a bit rapid paced at times. But if you want a unique and interesting look at a forgotten chapter of American history, then be sure to check out Death by Lightning on Netflix. At number 28, it is Heirs to the Land, a medieval historical drama set in 14th century Barcelona, which follows the resourceful Hugo Lore as he rises from poverty to eventually becoming a successful winemaker, all while navigating the brutal class warfare, religious persecution, and political intrigue of medieval Spain. Heirs to the Land is unique as it is perhaps the only show I have ever seen that explores Jewish life during the Spanish persecutions, and this series really does bring something new to the genre with its multi-generational spanning narrative. At number 27, it is Vikings Valhalla, a sequel series to the hit historical TV show Vikings, with Vikings Valhalla set 100 years after the original series. And this show depicts the legendary adventures of Viking explorer Leif Erikson, his sister Freydis, and the ambitious Nordic prince Harald Hardrada as they navigate the violent world of Viking society. However, it has to be stated that Vikings Valhalla is nowhere near as good as Vikings in any way or form, but the high production value alongside excellent costume design and set pieces are one of the better aspects of this historical show. But if you have any sort of interest in Viking history, then you may enjoy Vikings Valhalla as well. At number 26, it is House of Guinness, a historical drama that portrays the events following the death of brewery mogul Sir Benjamin Guinness in 1868 in Ireland. And his will has a profound impact on his 4 adult children as they navigate family secrets, political intrigue, and the violent tensions between the Irish Republic Brotherhood and their English business ties. House of Guinness has a really interesting primary plot, with each sibling having secrets that could destroy the Guinness family's legacy. But the main issue with this series is the fact that although the main storyline is good, a lot of the side plots aren't very interesting, and sometimes there's just too much going on within the show. But if you want to understand the history behind one of the world's most famous breweries, then you should definitely check out House of Guinness on Netflix right now. At number 25, it is American Prime Vault, a Netflix original miniseries which depicts the 1857 Utah War and the violent clashes that would occur amongst Native Americans, American pioneers, and the Mormons of the region. This miniseries is very well acted and produced, and I would say it has the best pilot episode of any historical TV show I've ever seen. But if you're looking for a show which focuses more on authenticity and realism, then you might want to give American Prime Vault a miss, as this series is a thrilling action adventure first and a historical drama second. At number 24, it is The Last Tsar, a docu-series following the life of Nicholas II, who was the last Tsar of Russia till he was deposed in the Russian Revolution. And with only 6 episodes, the plot moves along at a steady pace and it throws viewers straight into the peak of a revolution. Also, it is refreshing to see that historical accuracy was taken seriously in this docuseries, and the history behind the Russian Revolution was told in an honest, educational, and engaging way. So if you're looking for a show to transition you into Russian history, then The Last Tsar is my recommendation for you. At number 23, it is Dear Hungrong, an exceptionally dark Korean historical drama set in late Joseon era Korea, and this series follows the mysterious return of Hungrong, the long-lost heir of a powerful merchant family who reappears after 12 years with no memory of his past. And the storyline here is really interesting, with the series doing a great job of blending mystery, family intrigue, romance, and complex political scheming together in a really fascinating way. However though, I wasn't a fan of the forced romantic love triangle of the series, and I felt the ending did not answer all of the questions from the show effectively either. But if you have a Netflix subscription and are looking for an excellent Korean historical drama, then Dear Hungrong is my recommendation for you. At number 22, it is Troy, Fall of a City, which is based around the Trojan War and the Siege of Troy in particular. And this show is unique as it is pretty different from other depictions of the Siege of Troy. And I enjoyed the show for its great storyline, decent battle scenes, and the slower pace of the series. But the acting in the show does leave a lot to be desired, especially by the actress who plays Helen, as she is not a very engaging character. But this doesn't prevent Troy, Fall of a City from being an enjoyable historical miniseries overall, even if it does have a few shortcomings. At number 21, it is El Chapo, a Netflix original series based around the life of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, with this show doing a great job depicting his larger-than-life story. This series benefits from a great storyline, brilliant acting, and some really brutal and vivid battle scenes. But this show is not a high-budget production, and this is evident in the set pieces and production design of the show. But if you have any sort of interest in finding out more about the life of one of Mexico's most dangerous drug lords, then be sure to check out El Chapo. At number 20, we have Norsemen, a Norwegian comedy series about a group of Vikings living in the village of Norheim during the year 790. And this series depicts the day-to-day events and struggles of Viking life in a humorous and comedic manner. And this show has a surprisingly engaging and interesting plot, brilliant acting by the entire cast, and just the right balance of being funny and nonsensical. So if you're looking for a show which will give you a fascinating new way to witness Viking society and medieval history in general, then Norsemen is a great recommendation for you. At number 19, it is Barbarians, a Germanic historical TV series which covers the Roman Empire's attempts to occupy Germanica in 9 AD and the rebellion against the conquest by the Germanic tribes led by Arminius. This show does a fantastic job of bringing this little talked about time in world history to the small screen, with the Germans and Romans both speaking their native languages, giving the show a much more authentic feel than most other historical TV shows. And this series does a great job of bringing the politics and societies But I do have to emphasize that the second season of this show is really subpar and it loses most of the magic that the first season had. But if you're looking for a historical TV show that has one of the best first seasons of any drama I've ever seen, then Barbarians is my recommendation for you. At number 18, it is Griselda, a miniseries which tells the extraordinary story of Griselda Blanco and how she built a cocaine empire in America and would eventually become known as the Cocaine Godmother. Griselda is a 6-episode miniseries, and that isn't nearly enough to tell her complex story properly if you ask me. But this show is very rapid paced with so much happening per episode that you're just glued to your screen from beginning to end. If you want a show that is brutal, fun and engaging, then be sure to check out Griselda on Netflix. At number 17, it is Godless, an American Western drama that tells the story of a runaway outlaw who steals a tremendous amount of gold from his mentor and finds himself hiding out in a remote village in New Mexico, where all the inhabitants are women as the men have all died in a terrible mining accident. So if you want a really unique Western drama which has brilliant acting, a fascinating and unique storyline, as well as a look at the wild west in a totally unique way, then Godless is my recommendation for you. At number 16, it is The Crown, a Netflix original historical drama depicting the reign of Queen Elizabeth II, with the show starting with her adolescent life before she became queen and finishing with season 6 displaying her reign and influence on the UK during the 21st century. This series has amazing actors across all seasons, and the story is told in a well-paced, honest and historically accurate manner. Honestly, there is very little to critique about The Crown. It occasionally stumbles with pacing, but other than that, The Crown is the pinnacle of historical TV shows, and I recommend viewers to watch this show as soon as possible if you haven't done so already. At number 15, it is Frontier, a gritty and bleak historical drama set in late 18th century North America, focusing on the Hudson Bay Company and its ruthless monopoly over the fur trade. This series follows Declan Harp, a half-Irish, half-Cree outlaw portrayed by Jason Momoa, and his character wages a brutal war against the company through raids, alliances, and calculated vengeance. However, though, the plot can sprawl and lose focus at times, with the storyline being a bit too slow-paced for me at times. However, though, if you want an intriguing look at native life and the fur trade, then be sure to check out The Frontier. At number 14, it is Kingdom, a South Korean historical drama which is set in a fictional medieval Joseon era timeline, depicting the story of a crown prince as he sets out to investigate the source of a mysterious plague that begins to ravage his country. But this plague turns out to be much more deadly and different to anything he could have expected. Kingdom has amazing acting, an original storyline with lots of plot twists, and a perfect mix of horror, suspense, fight sequences, and political intrigue. Some of the characters though are a bit bland and one-dimensional, and I feel like sometimes a bit of the story does get lost in translation. But aside from these very minor critiques, Kingdom is definitely a show that you need to get on your watch list as soon as possible. At number 13, it is The Empress, a historical drama based on the life of Empress Elizabeth of Austria, focusing on the various court politics and internal and external struggles she has to overcome after she arrives in Austria-Hungary and catches the attention of the young emperor and her sister's betrothed, Franz Joseph. The Empress is a show which benefits from a great plot, great pacing, costume design, and set pieces as well, and it does a decent job of gripping the viewer in just from episode 1. If you can ignore the huge number of historical inaccuracies and the general liberty taken with the life of the historical characters, then you will find a fun and entertaining historical drama in The Empress. At number 12, it is Marco Polo, a Netflix original series focusing on the exploits of Marco Polo during his time at the court of Kublai Khan in Mongolia. And this series had a huge budget, being one of the most expensive historical TV shows ever created, and this is evident within the excellent production quality of the series with awe-inspiring set pieces, costume design, and battle scenes. However though, Marco Polo suffers greatly with pacing issues and the plot stumbles at many points, especially in the first season. But midway through the first season, Marco Polo finds its footing and it transforms into a thrilling historical adventure. At number 11, it is Outlander, a historical drama with the plot focusing on a World War II military nurse named Claire Randall, who through a series of events finds herself transported back in time to 1743. And in order to survive during 18th century Scotland, Claire is forced to marry a Highlander, Jamie Fraser, whom she quickly falls in love with. And this show has a fantastic storyline covering a little explored part of Scottish history, including the Jacobite Rising. There really isn't much to critique about Outlander except that some of the later seasons just have far too much filler, but if you haven't seen Outlander yet, then I highly recommend you check it out as soon as possible. At number 10, it is Narcos Mexico, which tells the story of Felix Gallardo, who rises from a small town sheriff to eventually becoming the undisputed head of Mexico's drug trade, by uniting all of the various feuding drug cartels under his own banner. And Narcos Mexico has some brilliant acting by the entire cast, with all secondary and primary characters bringing their A game to the show. There are some minor hiccups where some unimportant characters and events take up much more screen time than they should have, but that doesn't stop Narcos Mexico from being one of the best Netflix original series that you can watch right now. At number 9, we have Rise of Empires Ottoman, a docuseries which shows in great detail the siege and fall of Constantinople by Mehmed the Conqueror. And this siege results in Emperor Mehmed dealing with a number of obstacles and struggles to get past the impregnable defenses of Constantinople. So if you enjoy the more military and warlike elements of historical TV shows, then Rise of Empires Ottoman is a great recommendation for you. At number 8, it is My Country, A New Age, a South Korean historical drama which takes place at the tail end of the Goryeo dynasty and the beginning of the Joseon dynasty, depicting a storyline focused around a set of 3 friends from different walks of life, all of whom have to make great sacrifices to protect their country and the ones they love. My Country, A New Age is definitely one of the most underrated historical TV shows on Netflix that you can watch. At number 7, it is Narcos, the Netflix original series which depicts the rise and fall of Pablo Escobar. And this is an amazing TV show which has an engaging storyline, some brilliant acting by the entire cast, and non-stop plot twists and thrills which will keep you glued to your seat. I actually don't have much to critique about this show at all, except that I didn't find the 3rd season to be as engaging as the first 2. But this doesn't stop Narcos from being one of the best TV shows ever created in any genre ever, and if you haven't seen Narcos yet, I highly recommend you watch it as soon as possible. At number 6, it is the new Netflix original TV show Last Samurai Standing, and it is easily one of the best TV shows that got released in 2025. And if anyone wants an action-filled samurai drama, then you will love The Last Samurai Standing. This historical series depicts an epic fight for survival amongst 292 fighters, with the winner of this deadly battle royale getting 100,000 yen. This series is great. It has some amazing and high impact battle sequences, a gripping and engaging storyline, and some brilliant acting, especially by lead actor Junichi Okada. Honestly, my only critique of Last Samurai Standing is that I just wish there were more episodes. So if you haven't seen this brilliant samurai TV show yet, be sure to check it out on Netflix right now. The 5th spot on this list goes to arguably one of the most popular historical shows ever created, Vikings. And this series follows the rise of Ragnar Lothbrok from a lowly farmer to a king and an eventual legendary figure in Viking history. Vikings is largely recognized as one of the best historical shows ever created, and that is due in large part to the amazing cast and storylines of the first few seasons, which saw the exploration of new lands and kingdoms by Vikings and the start of religious tensions between Christians and pagans. However, though the last 2 seasons of this show are not nearly as good as the initial 3, which does hinder the quality of the show overall. But if you haven't seen Vikings yet, then you're definitely missing out on one of the best historical TV shows ever created. At number 4, we have Black Sails, a TV show based around pirates at Providence Island, and the series is a prequel to the popular novel Treasure Island. This show has a cast of fascinating and morally grey characters, making Captain Flint and his crew an amazing set of characters to watch and see develop. And Black Sails does a great job of displaying how difficult it is to establish power within a city such as Nassau, a pirate haven in which only the strong, ambitious and powerful can rule. And I have to say, Black Sails is a series that I enjoyed far more than I ever could have expected to, and if you haven't seen it yet, then I highly recommend that you add it to your watch list right now. And number 3 is Peaky Blinders, a historical TV show set in England shortly after the end of World War I. and it uses the fictional Peaky Blinders gang to show the discontent in England during this time period and how this gangster family slowly grows in power and influence in Birmingham. This show has amazing acting, especially by lead Cillian Murphy, who plays the role of Tommy Shelby, the leader of the Peaky Blinders. And honestly, the storyline here is amazing, and it really does a great job of exploring the cultural, socio-economic conditions of England during this time. The show does start off a little bit slow, but if you give it a few episodes, you will find a show here that is brutal, smart, and filled with engageable great characters who will grip you from beginning to end. The second spot on this list goes to Spartacus, an action-filled historical TV series about a gladiator named Spartacus and his rise from a lowly slave to one of the most feared enemies of the Roman Republic. Spartacus takes everything that fans love about historical TV shows and puts it into overdrive, as there's only 10 episodes per season, meaning there is little to no filler. The character development for Spartacus is great, and his rise from slave to rebel leader is believable and interesting to follow. However, some people might not like the over-choreographed nature of the show and some of the historical liberties taken within the series as well. But if you're looking for a TV show that is truly engaging and entertaining, then Spartacus is my recommendation for you. And the top spot on this list goes to The Last Kingdom, a historical drama which follows a central character named Uhtred, a born Saxon but raised Dane, making him a useful tool to be used by leaders and kings for both cultures for their political and personal ambitions. And this series does a great job of portraying the impact of religious tensions between pagan Vikings and Christians in England, leading to many battles and conflicts. The Last Kingdom has amazing secondary and primary characters, a fantastic plot with minimal filler, and a tight-knit story and amazing battle scenes as well. Some of the latter seasons of The Last Kingdom aren't as great as the initial 3, but if you're looking to revisit Viking culture and their assimilation into Christian England, then The Last Kingdom is my recommendation for you, and in my opinion the best TV show that you can watch on Netflix today. So let me know in the comments down below if there are any other great historical TV shows on Netflix that I may have missed out on. And as always, if you want to stay up to date with everything to do with historical movies and historical TV shows, then subscribe to my channel History Spark, and thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye.